So our first lesson of statistical reasoning is we talked about the different types of graphs that you may see, and it's just really about naming the graph. So you want to make sure you can identify the different types of graphs. And so we went through and we talked about, what we thought they were, and we just started naming them. And then we discussed the different characteristics so that we knew how to determine which one it was in the future. So for instance, this one is a bar graph. So we named this as a bar graph, and then when we went to number 2, some students may have said bar graph, but this is actually not a bar graph. This is called a histogram. So we looked at the different characteristics and figured out, okay, how can we tell in the future how it's a bar graph and what makes it a histogram? So first let's label this. Let me go ahead and put bar graph. And this one is a histogram. Alright, so if you look at the different characteristics, most students were able to see, sorry, my handwriting's a little funky. So most students were able to see that there are spaces between the bars on a bar graph. That is true. So that's easy to see. If you notice there's spaces, it's definitely a bar graph. If it's a histogram, the bars will be touching, alright, wherever there is a bar. So notice they are touching. Here, there's just no data here. So it's okay to have a gap in a histogram. It's just notice they're not touching. So that's the first thing that you can see. But sometimes it's not so easy to tell whether or not they're touching because the bars may be either really close, or if you think about these lines in the middle, what if these lines in the middle were white? If these were white, then it would look like there were gaps, and there's not. So you just gotta look a little closer sometimes. So the second thing you wanna look at is at the bottom of the bars. If there are categories down there, then that is going to be a bar graph. Basically words. If there's some words down there and it's not a certain range of numbers, then that is definitely a bar graph. Notice on the histogram, each bar starts and ends at a number. It's like a range for a number. And then the following bar starts at that last number and goes to the next number. So a histogram, each bar represents a range of numbers. Or on a bar graph, it represents a category. Alright, so that's bar graph and histogram. So then we kind of just went through and named the other ones we saw. Most students know that this is a pie chart. Once again, we're not analyzing them yet, we're just naming them, identifying them. And then this one you guys have seen before, it is a box plot. You guys have been at middle school probably known this as a box and whisker plot. But we take the little cutesy thing off of it once we get older and look at more of it as a professional in a professional light, so we just call it a box plot. So in college they'll call it a box plot, in the actual profession they'll call it a box plot. This one you guys have seen in other maths, it is called a scatter plot. So notice it's on 2 different numerical scales, an x-axis kind of and a y-axis in a sense, and this is all the different data just scattered. It's not connected. It's all just there, present by a coordinate or a dot. Now we see this one. This one is the one that you guys probably have seen the least in your lifetime. So it's called a stem and leaf plot. So a stem and leaf plot basically is a way to organize a large amount of data. And the thing is, sometimes if we list numbers out horizontally on a line, we won't have enough room. So that's why they organize it like this, so we could see it all in one place. So let me show you how to read it. This left side is called the stem, and the right side, the right side are all the leaves for that stem. So all these are all the leaves. So basically the stem is the first digit, so this 1 is the first digit. All the leaves are the second digits for that first digit. So let me go ahead and start listing it so you can see what I'm saying. So the first number in the list would be a 10. The next number in the list would be a 13. The next number in the list would be a 14. Then there's another 14, so there's 2 14s. And then the next number is a 15, so hopefully you can kind of see the trend. And this would keep going, and you'd see all the different numbers in the list. Down here would be 20, 21, 21. So the thing is, imagine all those numbers written out. It'd be really long, we'd run out of room. So stem and leaf is just a way to organize it to where you can see it all in one place. Alright, this hopefully you recognize. We've already covered this one. It is a histogram. This one, if you look at it, you'll see these are actually categories by grade. You got a B average, you got between a B and a C average. So it kind of looks like, oh, well, there's also a range. Well, yeah, there is, but notice they made the grade categories instead, which you could see as a bar graph. You could definitely see the space between, so you know it's a bar graph. This one was a tricky one to decide between bar graph and histogram. So this is one good example of where, hey, they didn't use black lines in between. They actually, if you look at the bottom, and notice that there's a range for each bar, because this one's under 5,000. The next one's 5,000 to 9,999. This next one picks up right where that one left off and goes here. So each one represents a range, each bar does. So it's really tiny, it's hard to see, but notice instead of using a black line to separate, they used a white bold line. So it actually is a histogram because it has those ranges at the bottom. All right, not categories. So here we have the first one we've come across in the PowerPoint, a line graph, where basically it's a line, it's all connected. Doesn't have to be a completely straight line. It has kinks in it here and there, but notice all the data is connected. And line graphs are basically showing stuff occurring or happening over time. So usually there'll be some type of time down here. This is a dot plot. It basically shows where each dot represents a data point. So we know that there were 2 zeros in the list. There were 3 ones in the list. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2s in the list. So that's a dot plot. And then we just kind of went through and saw the same type of graphs and named them. But the minute we came across where there's 2 of some type of graph is a comparative pie chart now, because now you are comparing more than one. So just put the word in front, comparative, anytime you see a double of some type of graph, because that's what you're doing. You're comparing data, but using pie charts. So comparative pie chart. So then you go through and you see, now we have comparative bar graph. You just see these repeating graphs and you just name them. Right? So that's what we did on the first lesson. This was the one there's actually 2. This one, which is a table, which is just a way to organize several different types of data and a lot of data at one time. So very simple, just a table. And the only other one that wasn't named yet is this one. This is a pictograph. You've probably seen it when you were in elementary school. Probably the only place you've seen it, because it's actually not a good graph at all, but it's a good way to introduce it in a little cutesy manner. Introduce data and counting data, organizing data in elementary school. Notice it has a key here that represents each picture, shows you each picture represents 50, but notice it's not good because the width is not the same for each picture. Notice the cats are skinny, where the dogs are kind of wide there. So, but each of them represent 50. And the thing is, by the time you get all the way to the end here, you totaled 50 plus 50 plus 50. You add these 50s together, the cats are actually going to be more 50s than the dogs were. But it looks like it's less because it's shorter here than this is here. So that's why a pictograph isn't used, because the pictures aren't often the same width, and it could be deceiving. So yeah, we just went through and just named the other ones. These are all ones that have been shown so far, and that was it. So yeah, that's the first lesson. Make sure you understand, or you can identify the different types of graphs.